Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So I just learned some really awesome news about the future of Gorilla Grodd on The Flash, so I thought I'd do a video for it before I go rewatch Star Wars for like the billionth time. Just careful for spoilers from The Flash Season 2, Episode 7 if you haven't seen it yet. It's the Grodd episode. The showrunner Andrew Kreisberg was talking about the ending, as well as like the other big CG creatures that they do, and what a surprise that they've been able to do these big things like King Shark, Gorilla Grodd, even Zoom. A lot of Zoom is CG if you didn't realize it. But behind the scenes, when they were originally writing the episode, they didn't have Gorilla City at the end just because it was going to cost so much money to do the CG for the whole cityscape. He made this big joke about how they showed him this picture of a sign that said Gorilla City, and they're like, well, we couldn't do the city, so we put up a sign that said Gorilla City. And the first joke out of his mouth was like, why is the sign in English? Who is this sign for? Is it for hikers that are just mysteriously happening upon Gorilla City? So the showrunner was like, we have to find the money, we have to do Gorilla City, we absolutely have to do this. So they did it, and we all pooped our pants just because it's so awesome. I mean, Grodd in this episode, like you can see how they evolved his design from season 1, but going to Gorilla City is a step above and beyond. Now the question was posed, are we going to go back to Gorilla City? Will there be a Gorilla City episode? And this is really the whole reason for making the video. He was like, well, if we did go back, because it's so expensive to do all those CG apes, all the cityscapes, all that stuff, it would probably be a 2-part episode, just so they could spread the cost over multiple episodes. And he talked about a few steps that films will sometimes take to get around cost issues, like Planet of the Apes. If you guys have seen it, it's all motion capture, very expensive to do the CG, so there's little tricks that they try to pull to save money. The really good example that Andrew Kreisberg gave is that someone on their team, like on the inside of the Flash team, knows someone who worked on Planet of the Apes, and they had a bunch of physical costumes that they made before they decided to make the Planet of the Apes movie CG. So they had all these like spare ape suits that looked amazing, but they just didn't end up using. So the Flash people got access to that. So they're like, well, we might use a mixture of that and then reuse the Gorilla Grodd model with a bunch of armor. So you have a bunch of gorillas that look similar to Grodd, but you use armor, practical armor, to make them look different. So you can kind of see where they're going with this. Obviously, a 2-part Gorilla City episode is probably too big to do in the back half of season 2. Like, they've already plotted most of the season out. But to me, just the way he talked about it made it sound like, yeah, we're definitely going to do this in a 2-part episode, and it's not going to happen this year, but we'll probably definitely doing it in season 3. So on top of that, like, he even went further beyond that. He's like, if you're going to do Gorilla City, well, then you have to do Solovar. Now, this is from the showrunner's mouth and the team that brought you King Shark. So if they can do things as crazy as that, then, doing the Babe Ruth thing and calling their shot being like, well, 2-part Gorilla City episode with Solovar, they're probably going to do it. The funny thing about the interview, it was actually on Kevin Smith's podcast, is that Kevin Smith, regardless of what you think about his films or anything like that, said that he felt King Shark on The Flash Season 2 looked better than Doomsday did in the Batman vs. Superman trailer. Now, Andrew Kreisberg is the showrunner of The Flash. He works with Warner Brothers, so he was very political about like, hey, please, let's look at the bright side of this. Both very awesome things going on. Kevin Smith was kind of joking around, but let me know in the comments, which do you guys think looks more badass? Keep in mind they don't spend more than like $2 or $3 million per episode of The Flash, and even when you think about a 23-episode season, that's still half the budget, less than half the budget of Batman v Superman. So just think about how awesome it is that the Flash people are able to do such awesome things like King Shark, Gorilla Grodd, Gorilla City in the future that look so good that they're able to hold their own against like super big budget film effects. Now I know a lot of you guys are still asking about Zoom, we're still wondering who he is, and it's probably going to be a while before we see him take his mask off. But just to explain the Zoom CG, like why he's so expensive and why we don't see him as much on screen, like the reason we don't see him as much is a function of the story, but it also is kind of in keeping with the theme of not trying to blow all their money. So what they do is they use CG to stretch the mouthpiece a little bit, darken the eyes, and use the blue lightning. So the actual costume itself probably looks a little bit closer like this. They actually haven't released any behind the scenes pictures of the Zoom costume. They'll probably wait till after the season, but you can see like how it still requires a lot of CG even though the suit itself is practical. In related Flash matters, they just announced a couple of castings. One of them was an evil speedster created by Luthor Corp. Whenever Luthor gave a bunch of people powers and tried to control them, like he created a bunch of superheroes whose powers he could just turn off with a flick of a switch. I'm wondering if this speedster character is going to be tied to the Velocity 9 plotline. That's another good question. Which of the female characters who have been speedsters in the comics do you want to see get Speed Force powers on the TV show first? Jesse Quick, Iris West, Patty Spivot, they've all had Flash powers at various points in the comics. But in case you guys didn't know, The Flash is coming back January 19th, Arrow's coming back January 20th, and Legends of Tomorrow Episode 1 is dropping on the 21st. So it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday every week. I'd recommend you watch the episodes in that order. Andrew Kreisberg, actually, he even said that originally Legends of Tomorrow was going to be called JSA. They're like, can we use just the JSA letters without saying Justice? And the reasoning for why they didn't try to call it Justice Society is because of the expectation of characters that you'll see that they'll probably never be able to do. Superman being at the top of that list. So it's like, if you're not going to ever do Superman, then you can't really call it Justice Society. So they didn't want to like give fans the middle finger where it's like, hey, we're going to do Galactus on screen, but he's not going to look anything like the Galactus that you know. He's going to be some stupid glow cloud. So that's why it became Legends of Tomorrow, so that it could like be its own thing without getting your hopes up for characters that you never see. But they did say because it's a time travel show, that in future seasons we'll probably see other teams from earlier points in history in the DC universe, in future seasons that is. The example that Andrew Kreisberg gave is that if they go back to World War II era during Season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow, we're not going to see any other big DC heroes from that era. Season 2, though, is a different story. That like we probably will see team-ups from other eras as we travel to those different time periods. So that to me just feels like they're laying seeds for Legion of Superheroes from the future. If you're going to travel to the future, what's the biggest team that you know of from the future? The Legion. And that's another thing, too. If there's any characters in present day on Arrow or The Flash that would get Legion rings, who would you want to see get the rings? Because Barry's going to have his Flash ring. He's probably not going to wear 2 rings. Maybe the Legends of Tomorrow characters. I feel like they'd probably be the ones to get Legion rings first. But just a reminder that I'm still doing my reverse Flash ring giveaway. All you have to do to enter that is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. I'll do another DC video before the end of the week where I'll announce the winner of that. I'm also doing a Star Wars giveaway. I posted my non-spoiler review, so I'll put a link for that in the description. Seriously, if you haven't already, be sure to go see Star Wars this weekend. I'll be doing an Easter egg video later. I've already done the non-spoilery video. You can click here to learn all about that. Don't worry, no spoilers for the movie. And you can click here for all my other Flash and Arrow videos. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.